Alright guys, let's talk about Toy Story 2, which if you watched my Toy Story 1 review, I am reviewing all of these in preparation for Toy Story 4. In my last video, I told you that Toy Story 1 and all three of these films are some of my absolute favorite movies ever made. The first film is one of the first movies I remember ever watching in my life. They have had such an incredible impact on me, and they are still, as I've rewatched them so many times, and I love all three of these films. And on my Toy Story 1 rewatch, I loved it again, just as fantastic as it always has been. And rewatching Toy Story 2, it's again, like I just said, as fantastic as the first one, again on rewatch. The funny thing about Toy Story 2 is it was originally meant to be a direct-to-video movie. They didn't want to, they didn't have enough faith to think this will be, popular enough, so they were going to release this direct-to-video. Because Disney had a lot of stuff in that time period, like 1994 started the direct-to-video trend with Return to Jafar, which I am reviewing or have reviewed already on this channel recently. But it's funny because it was gonna go to a direct-to-video route where it wouldn't have been remembered as well. It wouldn't have had good animation as good as the theatrical release. So I'm so glad that they went and made this theatrical. They made it as theatrical as they could. Um, the thing I love about this movie is that it does everything the first movie does, but just keeps elaborating on these characters like the last movie. This is a perfect second chapter in a trilogy, even though there's a fourth one coming out. But the trilogy of them with Andy, this is the perfect second chapter. I love how it starts out in this one with Buzz Lightyear as opposed to Andy, because in the first one it's about Andy and Woody, and in this one it starts with Buzz fighting Zurg, and then you realize it's a video game, which I think is really cool. I love how it opens up with that, and I love how this one opens up with everything seemingly fine. Everything's happy. Andy is they moved. Andy loves all his toys still, and Andy's going to cowboy camp. And then Andy plays with all his toys right before he leaves, and actually rips Woody's arm, where it's got a big rip in it. It needs to be fixed. His mom comes up and talks to him we gotta go to cowboy camp, and Andy is so sad, and the mom says sorry honey, but toys don't last forever, and she puts Woody on the top shelf, which to toys is a terrifying thing. That might be where your end is in the room. And it's so sad with that, and it's so sad with the fact that we're introduced to this character named Wheezy, who is up on the shelf, who apparently months before the movie, in the movie world, Wheezy was put up there because his voice box went out. So I love the fact that Woody goes to save Wheezy, who gets thrown into the yard sale because Andy's mom has a yard sale, and she's gonna get rid of some toys, not any of the big ones, but she gets rid of Wheezy. She puts him in the box off the shelf. Woody goes, grabs Buster the dog, who was introduced in the last second in the last one. He gets Buster to take him down outside to save Wheezy, but then in consequence, he is taken by this collector named Al, who steals Woody because Woody is a collector's item. And then that causes Buzz and friends to go and save Woody, go and find him to save him. Now, I really love that, and I love the fact that it also starts out with Woody. Again, in the last movie, Woody was this jealous character who became friends with Buzz and stopped being a jealous character in the last one, which is great. It's a great story arc for him in the first movie. In this second one, I love the fact that he gets his arm ripped and he's put into a depression where he has this nightmare that Andy doesn't want to play with him anymore, and then he gets taken by Al, and then he meets these colorful new characters, Jesse, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete, who are part of his Roundup gang, who are going to be taken to Japan, and Woody is pondering about where he could just be behind glass and love for kids forever. And I love that story arc with him. So it's so great how this character now is wondering what he's gonna do with his life. He doesn't want to get injured anymore, even though of course it was an accident with Andy. Andy, of course, he didn't mean to rip Woody, but Woody has that thought of being there forever, at an antique or at a museum in Japan. So I really like that story arc, and I really love the new characters. This one does a fantastic job of introducing new characters. We are introduced to Jesse and Bullseye and Stinky Pete, and Jesse is just she's the equivalent of Woody, but she's this happy-go-lucky character, and Joan Cusack is so wonderful in this role. I love her in this role. She's so sweet and charming and so funny, and she's got emotional depth with this character, and it's so sad when we realize her whole story. But I love Jessie. She's a fantastic addition. I love that there's a girl cowboy too. That like they both are in the show. Apparently, they're both friends who go on adventures together. And then with Bullseye and Stinky Pete in the Woody's Roundup show from like I'm assuming the 50s because it's in black and white. So I really love that. And Stinky Pete is good. And you realize that later that he's the villain of the movie. But I like him a lot too. I think he's great as well. And I love how we also get a lot of time between them all together, Woody and the Roundup gang. So then it does have a legit feeling of him questioning like, should I go with them? Should I not stay with Andy? Should I go and like be loved by kids for generations? Like that is a good question for him, and I really like how this movie delves into the second story for Woody. Like I just think it's so great and wonderful. And this one also is even funnier than the last one, and the first one is really funny too, but this one has some great comedic moments. Like whenever Buzz and pals are driving around in the toy store and then they encounter all the Barbies and Jodie Benson voices Barbie. That's so funny. Jodie Benson was the voice of Ariel in The Little Mermaid. She has that great spunky voice where like she plays Barbie very well. Like she's just got that voice that's perfect for Barbie. Like she's genuinely so funny and she's so likable. Like as this Barbie character who is quote unquote generic in the movie because Barbie is like Barbie in both of these movies in 2 and 3 like she is a character but she is in her archetype of like what Barbie is supposed to be like this everyday girl kind of character. But Jodie Benson plays a great voice for her. I really love it. They've got her. She's a great choice. And I also love that they continue on with Buzz, whereas in the first movie he is delusional and realizes he's a toy, goes into a depression, and then gets out of it. In this one, Buzz encounters another Buzz Lightyear that is delusional, and Buzz is trapped while the other Buzz that's delusional goes with the gang, and the real Buzz Lightyear, Andy's Buzz Lightyear, has to follow them around to get back and convince them that he's the real one. That's so funny, and I love how they use the delusional Buzz again, but they don't do it in the exact same way because it's another Buzz. It's not Tim Allen Buzz again, or Andy's Buzz again. So I really love that. And then this movie is, like I said in the first movie is fantastic with building up these characters and emotions. This one is even better, even though I hate to say better because it's making me sound like the first one is worse, but it's not. This just gets even more emotional and just perfect with the emotional moments in this movie. Jessie, the character that I was mentioning about her backstory, is so sad, and this scene I'm going to talk about, apparently Tom Hanks and Tim Allen literally openly sobbed because it was so sad watching this scene that Jessie tells Woody, which is, and I agree, I really do get choked up during this scene with Jessie, but there's a scene where Woody decides he's going back. He's going to go back to Buzz and all them. And then he goes up to Jessie and she's sitting up at the window. And he said, "What you doing up here?" And she says, "Thought I'd get one last look at the sun before I get packed away again." And Woody said he's sorry that like he has to go back because he's still Andy's toy. And then we get this fantastic line that chokes me up where he's talking about he needs to go back to Andy. And then Jessie says, "Let me guess. Andy's a real special toy, and to him you're his buddy, his best friend. And when he plays with you, it's like, even though you're not moving, you feel like you're alive, because that's how he sees you." And then Woody just says, "Well, but how do you know that?" And then she says, "Because Emily was just the same. She was my whole world." And then we get this really, the scene I was saying that Tom Hanks and Tim Allen cried at watching, and I tear up watching this, or get choked up watching this, where it shows Jessie like her whole life with this girl named Emily, and then her loss of like Emily moving on and throwing her into like a donation thing, and like it is because of the music too. Sarah McLachlan did the song. It's so sad and so heartbreaking, and it's incredibly one of the best scenes in any of the three movies. And again, all three of these movies are perfect to me, but just still, that scene of her showing her loss with Emily like is one of the saddest things ever. It is so hard to watch, and I love it. It's one of my favorite scenes ever in any movie. It's truly sad and heartbreaking, and I just love that moment where you realize why doesn't want to go, like she wants to go to Japan, and Stinky Pete has kind of pushed that into her that like that shouldn't happen again with her. Like she should go and live with like them forever. And then I love the fact that Woody decides to stay now behind and not go with Buzz and the gang. And then I love how they play back the scene from the first movie where Andy says you're a toy, or Woody says you are a toy to Buzz in the first movie. In this one, Buzz says the same thing to Woody. He says you're not a collector's item, you're a child's plaything. You are a toy. And then Woody says, "For how much longer? One more rip and Andy's done with me." And then what do I do? But what do I do then, Buzz? Huh? What do you tell me? And then there's another fantastic line, which Tim Allen just knocks it out of the park with this line. But he says to Woody, "Somewhere in that pat of stuffing is a toy that told me that life is only worth living for unless you're being loved by a kid. And I came all the way to rescue that toy because I believed him." And then Woody just says, "Well, you've wasted your time," and then turns around, and it's just so sad that like Woody decides to go with them, and then right whenever Buzz leaves, you realize that Stinky Pete's the bad guy. But before that, we get this another incredible moment because Buzz and them are leaving, and then Woody watches on TV the end of Woody's Roundup, like the end of an episode, and like it's got Woody singing "You've Got a Friend in Me," which is a really nice touch, and it shows Puppet Woody on strings being held by a kid on the TV, and Woody just looks at it like he's making the wrong choice, and goes to Buzz, and then of course Stinky Pete doesn't let him back in the vent, but like Stinky Pete, you realize he's the villain. But that moment is so emotional where Woody watches the kid on TV playing with the Woody, like that's what he's meant to be. That's what his job is. And I love that moment. And then Woody tries to get Jesse and Bullseye to go with him. But then, of course, the Stinky Pete reveal, which is great. And I really do like how Stinky Pete says, like the reason he wants to do this is because he was on a dime store shelf for his whole life and wasn't sold. On a dime store shelf. So he's so furious and jealous that he's not letting it go away. Like he's going to have Jesse, Bullseye, and Woody go with him. Love that. And then I love the fact that the movie ends with another incredible climax where I think I like the first one better, but this one has a fantastic climax too, where Woody and Jesse and Bullseye are in a suitcase with Stinky Pete. They've got to get Stinky Pete out and save all three of them. While they're now they're in the luggage docks underneath in the airport, and they get rid of Stinky Pete, but like then Jessie is the only one not being pulled out of the suitcase, and she's thrown down the conveyor belt. So now Woody and Buzz have to get on to Bullseye and go race to go into the cart and go get Jessie, and then Woody gets in the airplane where it's going to take off with Jesse in there and finds her, and it's just such a great moment where Woody opens the suitcase and Jesse's just holding herself by herself in the suitcase, and they re-embrace her and Woody. And I love the fact that she says first off, "What if Andy doesn't like me?" And he says, "Well, obviously Andy will like you, but he's also got a sister." And she just goes, "He does? Why didn't you say so? Let's go." And they both start to get out of the airplane, but then it starts to take off. Like they're literally going to go on this flight apparently to Japan. But then they get out of the bottom of the plane and they do this fantastic thing where they talked about Woody's Roundup earlier the show and how it didn't have a concluding story arc. Like it didn't end. It was canceled. So I love that moment where Woody puts his pull string, hooks it on this thing underneath the plane where they're going to fly out, and Jesse's scared, and he says, well, think of it as the final episode of Woody's Roundup. And she says, well, it was canceled. We never saw if you made it. And he says, well, let's find out together. And they both fly out on his pull string and both land with Buzz and Bullseye and both embrace and are happy, and the plane flies away, and they made it out. And it's just so great. It's just such a rewarding moment whenever Woody, Buzz, Jesse, and Bullseye all reunite. It's just it's so great. I'm almost speechless because it's so fantastic. But I love I love that, and then I love the fact that they go back home, and then Jesse and Bullseye just become one with Andy. Like, Andy loves them. He loves the toys, and then Andy leaves with like his mom and Molly, like they're gonna go somewhere. And Wheezy has like the Stans number, which is "Sings You Got a Friend in Me," which is great. But I love the fact that Woody and Buzz are standing at the window watching Andy and his family like laughing and talking to each other. And Woody says, Buzz says to Woody, "You still worried?" And then Woody says about Andy, "Nah, it'll be fun while it lasts." And then Buzz says, "I'm proud of you, cowboy." And he just says, well, and to think about this, when it all ends, I'll have old Buzz Lightyear to keep me company for infinity and beyond. And it ends that way. And it's just so incredibly paid off just with all these characters again. They knocked this one out of the park again. I can't believe that they did this twice. Make this just as incredible as the first one. Just everything about this is truly, again, one of the best sequels, one of my favorite movies ever. Toy Story 2 is just blows me away with how they can do so much with sometimes using the same kind of elements from the first movie, but perfectly encapsulating it again in a way that's different and unique. Love everything about this movie. More emotion, more action, more character development. Love everything about Toy Story 2. That's my review on Toy Story 2. Tell me down below what you think of this movie. If you like this, check my content down below. And thank you guys again so much for watching.